with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A big welcome to you today to Made in America. This is Dr. Rich Rothman. I'm Neil's co-host, as you well know. Neil is on holiday this week, and we wish him well. He's communing with the animals somewhere out in Colorado right now. So we're going to hear a big report on that when we get him back on the show. But we have a great show for you today. I'm really excited to do it. Ed Brady's here with us. He's the president and CEO of Home Builders Institute. Gordon Chang's going to be here talking a little bit about China and energy. And John Carlson's going to join us on the show today. John, of course, as you well know, has been on the show a number of times, Deputy Press Secretary for President Ford and the Assistant Press Secretary for President Nixon. But let's get started with Ed. Ed, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thanks, Rich. It's great to be here.
Well, we're delighted you're here. The construction industry is such an important part of the socioeconomic of our country. And Ed, you've been in this a long, long time. You've been in it for over 30 years and been involved in building homes and educating. Let's talk a little bit about, we're in a really weird position right now. It appears that we have many more jobs and we're trying to get people to come back to work. And it looks like, HBI can really do something good for that. What is this all about, Ed?
Well, it's a long story, but it goes back, really to the Great Recession in the housing industry, where we lost millions of jobs, frankly, and those jobs never came back. Those people that were in the industry either aged out, found another path, or just decided not to go back to work. And so we've been fighting this for 15 years now, after the boom in 2006. And as you suggest, there's 300,000, give or take 300,000 empty jobs in the construction industry today. And as you also suggest, it's a booming housing industry. One thing that COVID didn't affect, because it's an essential business, is the home building industry. And so a combination of generations of lackluster recruitment into the industry, recession, people not, maybe getting paid more than what they would going back to work, the lack of training, the lack of input and investment in the human infrastructure in the housing industry and, frankly, the construction industry. And so we've got a real challenge ahead of us if we're going to provide the housing stock that we need in this country for good, clean, safe housing. And
housing's very important. Yeah. I mean, it's super, super important, and is such a great supporter of any community, that it's in. As I may have indicated, my family has been in the building business, and they built in South Florida. Right. We did formula building. We built whole communities. We could knock out thousands of homes, which we did over the years. And it's interesting. We went through the 70s. We went through 21% interest with Carter, and it just knocked the heck out of the industry down here, and a lot of people went under. Of course, in 2008, this is what you're talking about, we had the same scenario. So let me ask you a question. This is so important to people to get involved because they can make an incredibly good living. At the same time, they're fulfilling their American dream. They're creating the American dream for other people. So how does HBI do that?
Well, we do it in a number of ways. It's one thing we do. We do one thing, and that is to train the next generation of skilled workforce in the construction industry. And so we have to change, number one, change the perception of this profession. Through the last 20 years, society has pushed young people into four-year universities, into higher education, and frankly, I don't know the statistic, but 50-60% don't graduate with a degree. They have college debt, and they can't go out and find a good job. So we need to change the perception that there are good-paying jobs, and I think we're making headway. And there are good-paying jobs in plumbing and electrical and carpentry, and even more than good-paying jobs, there's entrepreneurship. As you said it earlier. Housing is economic development and housing. And so how HBI is doing that is we're going out and trying to change the perception. We're recruiting from the high school level, frankly, from the 7th and 8th grade level to the high school level, to the community college level. We're trying to recruit those displaced workers because of this pandemic. We're trying to steal away other industry workers to enter the industry that can make a good living. So we're training transitioning military. We're training incarcerated people that have been justice involved, that have paid their dues to society, that need a productive way to contribute to the society, and the construction industry is one of those. We're training at-risk youth. We mentioned earlier about you and I talking about a good job keeps people out of that crime. I wrote an op-ed about that the answer to some of the crime in the inner cities is provide good jobs. And this industry can do it. We just need to provide and invest in that human infrastructure. And so we have a curriculum in short order, in a matter of 12 weeks or even less. You can get a good basic skill level to pre-apprenticeship, if you will, the introduction to electrical, plumbing, carpentry, those things, and then go on and start working. And it's like playing the piano. Practice makes perfect, and repetition is critical. Job training, on-the-job training is critical into our industry, and so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to recruit those that are looking for good careers in an industry.
You know, over the years that Neil and I have been doing the show, because it's been around for quite a while, you know, we talk about apprenticeship programs, you know, being an apprentice. And you know, the whole psychology, the dynamic of education has really changed over the last 10 years or so. And that, not everybody, I mean, when I went to school, everybody had to go to college. That was the big push. You had to go to college, you had to study, you got to get that, you got to get your degree. It's going to be a guarantee. It isn't anymore. I don't see that. We don't see that. No. And very often you want to have an apprenticeship program. You want to learn a trade. The trade can pay you a heck of a lot more money than it would be if you just get at it with your 4-year degree and you're trying to make a living. So when you come along with a program, as you're pointing out at HBI, I would think, Ed, that we have the ability to create those jobs and give somebody an opportunity, and not with a heck of a lot of debt. Because debt goes along with the education. It's not that I'm negative education. I actually taught college back when I started my career a long time ago. That's where my doctorate comes from. But I've got to say, it's a whole different world out there. So this is a good idea. Yeah.
It's absolutely a good idea. I mean, we're starting, some of our students are starting $20, $25 an hour. So it's a good paying job, and our programs are free. We're a nonprofit. We get stakeholders to invest in this. Home Depot Foundation is one of our largest supporter,
great sponsor.
And so, great sponsor.
Yeah,
you know, they obviously have a lot of community interest, and they need to build the next generation of housing as well. So it is that perception. I would tell you the high school student that graduates as a senior and goes into the industry, frankly, a high percentage of them are going to do better in life than those 4-year or even those 3-year, 2-year, obviously, college students that don't graduate. With the college debt, it's tough for them to catch up. And we just have to articulate that parents, the influencers in this country have to allow kids to do what they want to do and what they enjoy. And it's not always a desk job.
So, you know, it's really important right now that we want to get these people back to work. I mean, Ed, it's a very, very interesting scenario that we're in. My partner, Neil, is a major American manufacturer. He's got many, many companies based throughout the United States, and he builds things, he creates things, he manufactures things. But he has, you know, and if he was here, he'd tell you, he has many, many jobs. There are so many job openings for people to come work for the company. And we can't. Neil has a lot of trouble getting people to come back to work. Do you address that? Do you talk to some of these people? Do you see that some of these folks want to get back to work? Give me a skill, I want to get to work.
Oh, we see it all the time. I mean, I think that there's a little bit of perception about people that don't want to work, at least in my world. The hope and the opportunity that I see in our students is real. I mean, the students, a lot of the students that we teach, including transitioning military, where you think might come out of 4 years of military service with a skill, they don't have a skill. And so, but they know they want to be productive. They went into the military, they've got the discipline, they've got the work ethic, but they need a skill to provide them that opportunity.
10 seconds. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, go to hbi.org. We can go, the Home Builders Institute is hbi.org. They can get all the information on there. They have to navigate the website, but they can click on where they can find a program, where our locations are. We're in 48 states, so we'd be hard-pressed in any state not to find a program. So I'd go there, and then obviously I'll give them my phone number. If they're interested, call me. I'll get them connected to a program, 309-275-0837. We want to get them involved and get them into the industry.
Well, that's terrific. Ed, I want to thank you so much for being on Made in America. This is a great opportunity, but everybody else stay there. We have so much more coming just your way. See you on the other side.
Made in America.
Welcome back to Made in America. This is Rich Rothman. Delighted to be with you today. Neil is on vacation, and he'll be back real soon, sometime next week. And we look forward to hearing from Neil. But we have a great show. Right with us right now is John Carlson. John's been on the show a number of times over the years. John was the Deputy Press Secretary for President Ford, and he also was the Assistant Press Secretary for President Nixon. And he was around in the Biden years. So, John, welcome to Made in America.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you.
Delighted you're here. So we've been watching what's been going on with President Biden, and there was a soundbite that I wanted to play. I'd like to get your opinion on this, and then let's talk about why it seems to be that history is repeating itself. So let's go ahead and play that bite, and then we'll talk about it.
No mistakes?
No, I don't think it could have been handled in a way that we're going to go back in hindsight and look, but the idea that somehow there's a way to have gotten out without chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happened.
You know, it seems like that's an interesting word, John. So, tell me about this. I mean, you were around for Vietnam. You were in the administration. How is this so similar to what happened then? And it seems like Senator Biden was part of that in a way. What do you think?
Well, the lack of planning, it appears, in the Biden administration is unbelievable. In April 1975, I met with President Ford every morning about 8:45, 9 o'clock. In April 1975, as Saigon was approaching collapse, President Ford called in Defense Secretary Schlesinger, Jim Schlesinger, and Secretary of State Kissinger. And he said, I want every available resource sent to Vietnam to evacuate our people and those Vietnamese who worked with us over the last, many years. And that plan was put into effect immediately. In those few weeks, the U.S. Air Force flew over 200 C-141 missions, 175 130 flights, evacuating more than 45,000 Vietnamese to Guam. In addition, we had helicopters taking our people and our colleagues and allies out to Thailand or to U.S. ships. Now, how this compares to what's going on right now, I can't even understand what they're doing. What if they evacuated? 2,000, 3,000, 5,000? I'm stupefied to go understand what's happening.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're actually flying planes out 60% full. We know that as of this radio show. But what's interesting to me, John, is that there was a senator who was actually fighting the ability for us to have the funding to effectively get people out of, Vietnam. And we do know, what we remember about that are the helicopters going off the roof of the embassy there. And we see that right now, is happening here. But who is that senator?
Joe Biden, Senator Joe Biden.
So evidently, Joe Biden fought the ability for us to get the funding that we needed to get the military and those who supported us in Vietnam out safely in an organized fashion. Well, how do we ever get the money, and how do we get the organizations to do that?
Yeah, what President Ford did, and many organizations went out to private funding entities who put up millions of dollars to relocate the South Vietnamese who helped us to the United States. Without that, we would have had an even bigger debacle.
So it just seems like, you would think that Joe Biden would learn a lesson in all of this. I'm just stunned by the reaction. Let's touch for a little bit on Lebanon. I know there was something that you wanted to talk about with that. So how does Lebanon relate to this?
Well, I just thought it was interesting that Saigon fell in April 1976. 2 months later, Lebanon was in tremendous civil war internally, and many countries were evacuating their embassies, pulling all their people out, and we did not pull ours out right away. And they said, if we don't pull them out in the next week or two, we're going to have chaos, and we're never going to get to the airport. We'll have a bloodbath on our hands. I was at a tennis tournament in Washington, D.C. one afternoon, Saturday afternoon. I got a call to come back to the White House immediately. I came back, walked in the Oval Office. President Ford, Vice President Rockefeller, and Henry Kissinger were meeting. And I said, John, we just finished evacuating secretly, privately, overnight, all U.S. military personnel, civilian personnel at the embassy, and those Lebanese who want to get out. There's not one single colleague or American casualty possible in Lebanon. We wanted you to call a press conference in 90 minutes. We're going to announce this to the world with Secretary Kissinger. So it's just interesting, the different way to do things. All the planning that went into that secretly, and there's not one casualty from that pullout in Lebanon.
John, we're going to run out of time. We only have about 15 seconds left. But I feel that I'm delighted that you came on the show today to talk to us, because I think this is very relevant, very relevant for what's going on today. And let us hope that we can move forward and save these people out of harm's way as they are right now. John, thank you so much for being on Made in America today. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay, just ahead, we have Gordon Chang is joining us. And we have a couple of things to talk about. Obviously, China. And China's a big player. It's the elephant in the room right now. Keep your eye on it. And we have energy. And somehow they're linked. Don't go anywhere. You're going to want to hear this.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome back to Made in America. This is Dr. Rich Rothman. Neil, of course, is on vacation this week, but we're here. We're doing the show. We have a phenomenal show for you today. On right now with us is Gordon Chang, columnist, author, lawyer. Everyone knows Gordon as the #1 expert when it comes to China. We're very excited to have him here. His book, best-selling book, The Coming Collapse of China. We've been talking about that. That's exciting. And, of course, you can reach Gordon at Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. And we're welcome to Made in America, Gordon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rich.
They don't call me that anymore. It's delighted to have you here. Listen, I am excited to have you on the show. I mean, I'm watching what's going on right now. And we've all been watching this for years anyway, as it relates to one major socioeconomic in this country, and it's energy. And I know you've talked about this, and you've been showing the red flag, ironically saying that, when it comes to energy. But, when you connect the dots and you see what's out there and you see what's happening, when you're going to take a basic economy with fossil fuels and you're going to transfer that, you're going to shift the dynamic of how we run our economy to electric, renewable fuels, there are certainly losers, and there's a really big winner. I want to play one quick soundbite from the past Energy Secretary, Rick Perry, and then we'll go from there. Go ahead and play that, please.
It is stunning, Sean, to see how fast we went from energy independence to now relying on countries like Iran to get our energy. But you think about where we were, the work that we did, the Americans that we put to work, whether it was building pipelines, good union jobs, building pipelines all across the country, stopping that Keystone pipeline out of Canada, and then allowing the Russians to finish the Nord Stream 2. I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense.
So, having heard Rick Perry say that, what do you say when you listen to this and you see we're changing? What does this really mean if we're going to shift the dynamic of this of energy in the United States?
Well, I agree with Rick Perry 100%. And there's a lot there to unpack. But the most important thing was that the U.S. was the world's largest producer of hydrocarbons. And because of that, we therefore didn't have as much interest in what happened in the Middle East as we did before, which means we weren't reliant on the Saudis or the Iranians or anybody else for oil. And now we are becoming that way because of what you mentioned, the Biden administration pushing the United States towards electric power, towards other things. And although generally, if you talk about a century in terms of transition, maybe that's the way we should go. But the point is, there's a lot to harm the American Republic in the interim. One of them is China. So, for instance, China produces a lot of solar panels. China has a lot of the lithium that we need for renewables. And that means that we become even more dependent on a hostile state, which has declared a quote-unquote people's war on us. So, short term, this is horrible diplomacy. This is horrible strategic thinking. And this could very well lead to all sorts of complications that Biden hasn't thought about.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. You know, what I find interesting, Gordon, is that, you know, the president came out with a statement a few weeks ago, and he said, you know, he used to get 50% electric vehicles by 2030. And the industry, of course, went along with it because they're all going to get paid to do it. It's going to come out of the taxpayers' pocketbook. But when they said that, first of all, we can't create those batteries here at the level that we need. It just doesn't happen because we need rare earth minerals. And as a matter of fact, the Biden administration has shut down the ability for us to get those rare earth minerals here. We have them. I interviewed the governor of Alaska. He was delighted to let them get the rare earth minerals out of Alaska, but the administration won't let them do that. So where does that come from? And that's a pretty frightening thought because the biggest winner in that to me is China.
Well, you're certainly right about that. And while we're talking about the headlines of today, guess which country has a lot of lithium? Well, it's a country called Afghanistan. And clearly, if the United States wanted lithium, they should have stayed there. But, going beyond that, we are increasing our dependence on Beijing because of this. I mean, what you would need to do is to have a Buy American program to develop rare earths in the United States and also to process them. And we would need to bring back our solar panel industry. If you do those things first, then we don't become dependent on China. But we didn't hear any of that from the president. So what he's really saying is that we should become a colony of China, which is really what China thinks of us. They think of the United States as a colony. So this is not good news for us.
No, I don't think it's good news, I have to tell you. I mean, we were energy independent. We were paying $1 and change less for fuel just about a year ago. We were totally self-sufficient. We were a net exporter of energy, which was remarkable. Took us 70-plus years to get there. By the way, we did that in under 3 years with Trump being in the office. And then we turn around, and here now this is the most humiliating thing I can ever imagine, next to what just happened this last week, begging the Taliban to work with us. Now before that, we were begging OPEC, we're begging Russia, and others out there who are not supporters of this country. Can you please produce more oil so we can lower the fuel? And that's the right thing to do. I've got to tell you, is Rod Serling in the room? Because it appears to me that, someone's wearing a, Kupferman suit and smoking a cigarette in the corner, because this isn't right.
No, it isn't right. And when we start to peel back this from many different layers, it just makes the U.S. far less independent. The other thing that people don't talk about is small manufacturers. They have been able to thrive under the Trump administration energy policies because they got cheap energy, which is, by the way, one of the important advantages for American producers. Well, we're going to increase the cost of energy, which means we're going to decimate even further small manufacturers.
That's exactly correct. Listen, we're up against the break. Can you hang for a few more minutes, Gordon?
I certainly can.
That's great. All right, we're going to be right back with Gordon Chang. We'll see you on the other side. A lot more to talk about.
Made in America.
Welcome back to Made in America. This is Dr. Rich Ruff, and delighted to have you here today. On the phone with us right now is Gordon Chang, a well-known columnist. You all know him anyway. Columnist, author, lawyer. His famous book, The Coming Collapse of China. He's available on Twitter on Gordon G. Chang, C-H-A-N-G. And we're talking energy, but we're also talking Afghanistan. So, all right, let's just try and look in the past for a second. We can play the second soundbite. Peter, that would be great. And then I want to have a conversation on that. So let's go back to the beginning of all this insanity. Go.
If there's one thing I know about New Hampshire, it's that your political bull detector is pretty keen. It's pretty sharp. You know that we can't just drill our way to lower gas prices. There are no quick fixes or silver bullets. If somebody tells you there are, they're not telling you the truth. We've got to keep developing the technology that allows us to use less oil in our cars and trucks, less oil in our buildings and our factories. And that's the strategy we've been pursuing for the last 3 years. And it's the only real solution to this challenge.
Well, that was a heck of a statement, but I think that was a great speech for him. I don't accept it, but it's a great speech, and I think that was kind of a kernel thought, Gordon, as to where we started going down this road. And here we are a number of years later. That was back in 2012, by the way. The number of years later, it seems like, Biden's administration is following up on that, except, unfortunately, what's really amazing, Gordon? We have proven under Trump, President Trump, that we can drill our way out of it. And yes, we can use our technology. And at the start, just before you had the break, you said that one of the most important things that we could do for the American economy is to have sustainable, inexpensive, and reliable energy. It's something that we need, and it affects everybody. So where do we go from there?
Yes, absolutely. And your thought about Obama's words were the same as mine, that, in fact, we did drill our way to energy independence.
How ironic.
Obama and Biden might not like it, but they got to tell the truth to the American public, because there are consequences to this. And as I said, if you're looking out over a century, well, maybe they're right. But the point is, right now, what they are doing is to destroy the American economy and destroy small manufacturing because they have this ideological idea. It is not based on the facts, and they're not being candid with the American public. And for an American president, that's the number one goal. You've got to talk to the American public. You've got to level with them, and you can't lie to them. And Obama lied to us.
Yeah, what a surprise. I want to go back. Let's segue over to Afghanistan for a second. And I'm under the impression that there are going to be unintended consequences that most people aren't thinking about right now. The most obvious is it's a humanitarian disaster. It's awful. It's an embarrassment. To me, it's one of the worst military lack of exercise that I've ever studied and seen. But having said that, there's something else that's going on, and that's what worries me. And if the U.S. is doing what they're doing, which they are, and we're creating this incredible vacuum, a sense of stability, Gordon, and then we have China and Russia playing in the ozone over there, this is not a good thing. What do you predict? I mean, we know that they were, whatever happened, by the way, to the China Road and Bridge Corporation, they've been interested in Afghanistan for quite a while. And they're moving in many parts of the world over there. So this is not a good thing, Gordon.
Well, if we talk about general strategy about should the U.S. be in Afghanistan, I think that we should have been there. I think we should have stayed there because we were keeping Afghanistan away from terrorism. I mean, yes, it was a forever war, but it also meant no terrorist acts against America or American friends and allies. But, once you make the decision to leave, this was an issue of a failure of the military and the intelligence community and the national security apparatus. This is an issue of competence. And in terms of going to your question, what is the consequence? Well, now we have China believing that it can move against Taiwan, move against American friends in the region because of a failure of the American ability to implement policy. So we've got to be concerned that China will move. And if China moves, then we are going to face probably Russia, Iran, North Korea moving at the same time, along with their terrorist allies. That means conflict at both ends of the Eurasian landmass at the same time. That means the possibility of global conflict, and we all know what that could lead to. So this is the problem when you have an ideological goal and you decide to pursue it at all costs without thinking of the consequences.
Well, that seems to be the case. So if you're in, and I spent time in Taiwan. I'm a past president of the World Trade Center Association down here. Taiwan is a remarkable country, and Taiwan has a remarkable World Trade Center, very successful. And if you're in Taiwan right now, what are you thinking? I mean, are you going to? I mean, I would think you would hope that the United States would be there, but I think looking out, we're looking weak. Doesn't look good for them. What are they thinking?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's interesting. The Taiwan public, and you can see this from both media and social media, focus more on America's long-term commitment to Taiwan than it does on the incompetence of the Biden administration, as evidenced by the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which is a good thing. But nonetheless, we know that China's propaganda recently has been relentless, and there are two themes. One of them is that the U.S. will not defend Taiwan, and the second one is that the U.S. can't stand up to China. So actually, I don't think that either of those are true, but the point is, it doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter what Taiwan thinks. What matters is what Beijing thinks. And if Beijing actually thinks that way, they're going to be provocative and they're going to be adventurous, and it could very well lead to history's last war.
Yeah, it's very, very disconcerting. Well, listen, we're up against the break right now again, Gordon. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Gordon Chang, his book, The Coming Collapse of China. You can catch Gordon at Twitter on Gordon G. Chang. And once again, Gordon, thanks so much for being on Made in America. Look forward to seeing you again.
Oh, well, thank you, Rich, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're going to be right back with a heck of a lot more information and some clips you're going to like to hear.
Made in America.
Welcome back to Made in America. This is Rich Rothman, co-host with Neil. And as you all know, Neil is on vacation. He'll be back soon. Great show, great information. But we're not done. I've got to play this clip. There's something that's been bothering me. I always like to end with a joke, and it's pretty hard. This has been a tough week. But I want you to hear this clip, and then I'm going to have a relationship with that clip. So go ahead, Peter. Let's do it.
But we've all seen the pictures. We've seen those hundreds of people packed into a C-17. We've seen Afghans falling.
That was 4 days ago, 5 days ago.
That was President Biden. Some of you may have caught that with George Stephanopoulos being interviewed. And George actually pushed him a little bit, which I'm surprised because he's so devoted to the Democratic cause. But he actually pushed him and said, listen, there are images out there, optics that are so horrible, the desperate people on the ground. But then you do remember those scenes that we saw on TV of people running with the supercargo plane that was going to take off and did take off. And unfortunately, people were so desperate, they hung on to the wheel well. They hang on to the wheels. And as it was at 800 or 1,000 feet, of course, traveling at hundreds of miles an hour at that point, they fell off and they fell to their deaths. And George was asking the president, could you have done this? Can we have done this better? Could something have been done more organized? And how do you feel about this? And I think George was looking for some empathy, some sympathy, some warmth, some emotion that would show, God, that was awful. I wish we could do better. But the response was, well, that was 4 days ago. And of course, the president backtracked that towards the end of this week. But you all know, and I know, and everyone knows, that your first response is usually your most honest response. That's the one that really counts. The others are contrived because you can figure out oh my God, what did they say wrong? I've got to fix this because it doesn't sound right, doesn't look right. And if you're in politics, my polling is going to go down, which it has been significantly. And so I watched that and I thought about two films that I love film. So I don't know whether you saw Spy Game. But Spy Game addresses this exact scenario when somebody in charge, in that case it was the CIA, in this case it was the president, the CIA being in the movie, the callousness of what happens on the global scale. Let's play the Spy Game clips.
Nathan, we killed this man. We used him and we killed him. Okay, then you gotta help me understand this one. Nathan, what are we doing here? And don't give me some about the greater good.
That's exactly what it's about.
Yeah, that's referring to a scene in Spy Game where Brad Pitt had to leave somebody, instead of taking them out of East Germany, who was an asset for the CIA. He had to leave them there to save his own life, and he was told, let him go, and that meant certain death to this character. Amazing, which is sort of like what we're talking about right now. Listen to the second bite, and they show you how they really thought about these assets. Go.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. You didn't look in his eyes. Don't tell me that.
He was your asset, somebody you used for information.
Oh, Jesus Christ. You don't just trade these people like the baseball cards.
Pretty cold, isn't it? And that's the world that they operate in, and that's the way, the emotional is going to be. And I watched this week, and I know you did too. And I just said, I can't believe this is this is history repeating itself, as John mentioned earlier, Vietnam to now, and Lebanon, except Lebanon was organized. And now I could not understand and believe that the president would say something so cold, so callous, as opposed to the first response I think should have been, oh my God, that was awful. Oh my God, that was awful. I wish I could have done something. Didn't do it. Didn't do that. And then backed it, later in the week, which really upset me. All right, so here's how we're going to end the show. We're going to end the show with the film Charlie Wilson's War. And I'm sure you saw that, Tom Hanks. By the way, it's Philip Seymour Hoffman's best film. So if you get a chance to watch it on one of the other cable networks or Netflix or something, I suggest you do it. And it actually talks about, Afghanistan. So I want you to listen to this clip with Tom Hanks being told what's going to happen in Afghanistan and why the U.S. screws up every now and then. Let's go.
Now think how dangerous that is. They're going to come home and find their families are dead. Their villages have been napalmed.
And we helped kill the guys who did it.
Yeah, but they don't know that, Bob, because they don't get home delivery of the New York Times. But even if they did, it was covert, remember? This is what we always do. We always go in with our ideals and we change the world. And then we leave. We always leave.
And we're going to see you next week right here at Made in America. And we don't always leave. We're going to be here for you. And we're going to walk you through this. You take care. Have a good week.